different, well,
Yeah.
but I'm saying, when we go back and review the video for news stories, it's awfully helpful. Otherwise, we start calling them all kinds of names, and if you read them, you'll start laughing because they somehow pertain to something.
Yeah, you better be careful, you lose your seat at the press conference.
I was, well, hey, when I was in the Post, I mean,
Did they ban another one?
Well,
Yeah.
the Post got banned.
New York Post got kicked out.
There's over 20 empty chairs, and they keep banning people, saying, when there's room, we'll bring you back.
Yeah.
Washington Post is out, New York Post is out.
And that African guy out
Yeah,
there.
the African, the guy from Zimbabwe,
Pretty soon,
he's out.
MSNBC's gonna be out. They asked too many questions the other day.
What were they asking?
They had the interview on Friday with Biden.
It's just
One half of the press room was empty.
Questions that expose things just can't be asked. That's what it is.
Well, that's what we're here for, to expose you.
The corruption in Winnebago County.
Brittany Dubin has joined.
The corruption, that's it, yeah, that's it, yeah.
Brian Hinker.
Yeah.
There's
Has joined.
nefarious characters in charge of this county, I tell you.
Admitting it is the first step, though.
Well, and after this, when I got here, I said, "Hi, my name's Bill."
Kevin, are you part of a support group for that?
Yeah.
Probably not. You know me well. Probably not.
Because, I just figured once you leave, then you start those support groups.
Yeah.
We'll see.
You were around the courthouse long enough that you know the help that we all need.
Oh.
Yes.
I left, so there you go.
Well,
That's the help I needed.
Speaking of Arizona, I might be going there next week.
What's parks?
Apache Junction.
Oh, and you're almost close to my stomping ground,
Yeah,
by White River and everywhere else down there by Sholo and everything.
go down there.
Over.
Help my dad drive back. He's having a little trouble with his legs and sitting in a sitting position. Tough working for that many hours at a time.
That'll do it.
Unless I'm not done home fertilizer, then I'm gonna send my kids.
It's nice and scenic this time of year. The desert's bloom. It's beautiful out there. It really is. That's one part I miss, from January to about now. It's blooming like
Is it
crazy.
9? It doesn't say it's 9 on the clock, and mine says 8:59.
There's just not.
Oh, that's wrong. I'm the official timer here.
It's going so.
All right, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, consider for approval minutes and agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes and the agenda.
I'll second the motion.
A motion Smith and second for Derby to approve the minutes and agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Discussion with possible action, health insurance.
Morning, Brittany and Brian.
Morning.
Good morning. Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And Carla, do you have our screen shared?
Yes.
Okay,
Might have to expand it though.
okay. I'll zoom in here a little bit too. Okay. All right. So So I've got the spreadsheet pulled up that we went over last time. So since then we had received kind of that final Wellmark like renewal exhibit with the rates, with the basically the correct rates after the rate relief of the 2%. And so if some of you took notes last time, you'll notice that these Wellmark premiums may have adjusted, $1 or so, just because the spreadsheet that I had created, I used, my own formula to take 2% off, but we wanted to have those exact Wellmark numbers in there. And so those might be a little different. So what we kind of wanted to talk through today, I know there had been some questions at the last meeting about how the plans were running as far as the claims paid out on the traditional plan versus the HSA. And so what we did, and I'll zoom in a little bit more on these numbers over here. So we looked at, kind of look over on this side here. We looked at the claims paid out, like I said, versus the traditional versus the high deductible. And we can see that the claims paid out on the traditional plan from July to May 2nd was roughly 130, I mean, you could round up 131,000 was the claims paid out. And then on the HSA, that number looked a little bit closer to 30,000. And so when we're looking at, which plan, we can look at claims, that gives us kind of one piece of data, but then we need to also look at how much are we funding into the partial for both of those plans, and then that kind of gives us a true look at what we call the loss ratio is. And so we look at claims paid out on the traditional and funding. The traditional plan, we see a 48% loss ratio. So the lower loss ratio, the better, is kind of how you can think of that. So 48% on the traditional, and then the high deductible actually came in at a loss ratio of 78%. So the high deductible has a little bit more claims coming out than funding going in. And so I know that was some information that a couple people had wanted to see. So I'll stop there and ask if there's any questions on that data.
Brittany, do you know the number of people in each type of plan offhand?
Yes. So we've got, so here's the enrollment for those plans. If I total up all of the Plan 1 enrollment, we have 66. Now, these numbers might have fluctuated a little bit. We've had some new hires and terminations probably since this data, but it's going to be pretty close. So 66 employees, 66 members, and then 21 on the high deductible.
Thank you.
Is what we got there. Yep.
I looked too. I kind of looked at our book of business and compared kind of the way I look at kind of analyzing the premiums is your premium savings on an HSA versus a traditional plan, and you compare it to the risk. And what I found compared to our other groups, and many are with Wellmark, so they kind of have the same type of spreads. The employee spouse, for example, is saving a little over $3,000 in premium with $6,000 of risk in terms of out-of-pocket maximum. The way I look at it is I take that premium savings minus the risk, and I come up with a little over $2,900 of real employee dollars at risk versus $4,000 on the traditional plan of the out-of-pocket. I mean, I think we're in line with many of our groups that it's not a, basically it's not a, it's fair. It's a kind of a 50-50 type call depending on the person. There's latitude and leeway on both sides, but I don't think we're priced, inappropriately. The family does get a little higher out of whack, but to redo everything would have some consequences potentially, and it goes away from our philosophy, or what we've done in the past is work off that, like we talked about last time, off that $1,000 single plan base plan.
Well, I appreciate you looking into this further and giving us more info on it. I hate to upset the apple cart by changing everything now.
Well, that was our thoughts. I mean, if we want to do a major change, in philosophy and have our HSA plan become the base plan and work the numbers in a different manner, to know the risk and things would be definitely a much bigger process. We're under some time constraints now too. I think we felt good overall about in today's inflationary world of being able to keep the employee rates not going up at all. Anything they get in a raise is actually a raise, which is rare in today's world. That's kind of our thoughts. And with all this said, we're going to still be in a great position next year, funding wise to if other options, a deeper dive is what we want to look at. We sure can. But I do like our position going forward, from the longer term. And in this world, longer term is like 2 years, but 2-3 years. But that's way better than reactionary like we've had to be at sometimes.
Well, I feel comfortable in how we're utilizing our temporary excess of partial self-funding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just with the funding that we had set last year, we've been able to kind of put ourselves in a good position for this year with, that double-digit increase that did go down a little bit, but by manipulating those funding numbers to be able to keep employee costs the same is beneficial. And going into, like Brian mentioned, the next year too, we're still sitting in a really good spot with that funding.
So, since we have employee meetings tomorrow, can I get a motion to go with the plan that we had for last week minus the change in deductibles?
And was the copay?
Or yeah, change in the copays, that's what I meant, sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize.
So minus the specialist copay changes that you made in it, if we do that, I would be willing to make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Motion Smith and a second Derby to go with the plan with the changes as stated. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carla, the plan changes the co-pays for next year.
No, it doesn't.
They stay the same
The
as,
co-pays will stay the same as they are this year. So, basically, everything will stay the same as it did this year for the employees. The partial self-fund will make it so that it looks like there'll be no increases. Brittany, if you need to call me after the meeting to talk about this a little bit, we can sure talk, so.
Okay, yep, that sounds good, and I will, from here, now that it's been approved, I will finalize the enrollment system with the rates today, so that will be ready for meetings tomorrow.
Okay.
So,
Alrighty.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion on that? We'll move on.
All right. Thanks, Brittany. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You bet.
thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Minders engineer.
Brian Hinker.
Has left.
We'll discuss.
Brittany
economic
Dubin.
matters.
Has left.
I got one item on the agenda here that I'll take most of my time. We have no projects really starting yet, except for our gravel crushing, which they're continuing to work out there and will be until probably about Memorial Day. It seems to be going well. And we're continuing our rock run. They're hauling out of Lake Mills, going toward north of Thompson, that area. That changes all the time, so it's hard to keep up with them. I don't think I have much more today.
I'm guessing blading's gonna go pretty well today.
Yeah, I would think so. Nice to have some moisture when we had actually a pretty dry spring.
Found a busted intake in the ditch. While I was sitting there, they got out there and fixed it. Talk about efficiency, and I got to watch the whole thing. Got entertained while I was waiting for the sprayer to spray.
Yeah.
But I did find another one like that. It looks like it has an open top that's really large. And that's in the ditch on 20th, out by Ball Vance's. It's in that low spot out there. It's in the west ditch. And I guess what is that? DD 21 Main, is it, that kind of circles around up into that? I didn't look it up. By the time I got back to the fertilizer plant, I didn't.
We'll find it.
If somebody's driving along there, they'll raise blacktop there.
All right.
I didn't have anything else. Anybody else?
There was one, and I can't remember if it was on one of our roads or the state road, but it seems like it was one of our roads on a gravel or something, where there was a hole and then there was orange marks pointing to the north. I don't know if that was on 140th by 9.
I'll guess it's, yeah, I don't think it's Shutter's Road, yeah.
Yeah.
It looked maybe like they had bored through a culvert or something, but I haven't followed up with them on it.
Yeah, that was,
Only right behind me.
they bored,
No.
they trenched through that pipe, so we had that fixed yesterday. They just ended up putting fiber on top of the pipe and got them back together, so.
I did. This would be a drainage matter, I guess, but I did find another intake that had a great big hole around it. It's out in one of the miners' fields. You know those people at all?
They don't have a lot of
It's
tile.
right by the fertilizer plant. It's a county tile out there.
Okay.
But that's a drainage issue.
Do you know if they know about it?
The Minders is?
Yeah.
I kept forgetting to call them this spring.
Okay.
See if they wanted to fix it. So have your dad or Dale or somebody take a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
In front of his brothers. I would assume they're not gonna want it. They just planted the field now, so they might wanna wait.
Just drove around it, I guess.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a pretty good hole too. It's,
All right, I'll ask them about it.
all right, anything else for secondary roads? We'll move on to discussion with possible action regarding a bridge near Three Fingers Campground on 135th Avenue, Section 29, Forest Township.
We talked about this before, and so here's an update, and maybe we'll need some direction. So the road that goes past Three Fingers, and then there's a bridge, and then leads to one residence, Kevin Williams' place. It's a aluminum box culvert that was put in 99 or 2000, and it has some deflection that appears to be worsening. And so this year, our bridge inspection company recommended that we post it to 15 tons. Hasn't been posted before. It's the only access point for Kevin's place. He didn't have another way to go, so that causes some issues. Initially, he had concerns about LP, and so I think we have concessions for that, at least in the temporary. But then also things like fire trucks and Heartland power trucks and, other types of utilities and emergency services that would need to get out to his place.
You got the LP coming out, making him the last delivery, so they only have his on there.
That's kind of what it is, yep, and I gave them permission to haul 20 instead of 15. The rating on this bridge is twofold, right? Part of it is to protect it from getting worse, and part of it is to protect the vehicles going over top from, some sort of collapse or something like that. So when we're talking about one LP truck or one fire truck or whatever, I have a lot less concern than if we had hundreds of grain semis going over top, making it, incrementally worse each time. So that's something to know, I guess. And if something needs to get out there, it's probably going to be fine, at least in the short term here. So knowing that we have a problem here, we looked at a few options. One is the do-nothing approach, and was where we are right now. We're trying to get, concessions made for what he needs at his place. It's probably going to get worse over time, so we certainly need to do something sometime.
How much gravel covers over the top of it? I'm looking at the picture, but
Maybe 3 feet. All right.
is it something that you could, like you were talking about shoring it up from the inside, but that isn't probably the greatest way to do it. But, like, can you dig the gravel out and then pour concrete over it or something like that with rebar in there that'll help carry that load across and then bury it in the gravel again?
Possibly. It's the shape is a kind of a rounded top box to start, and right now it's the curvature goes the opposite way.
And because it has such a, it looks weak.
Yeah.
The design just doesn't look.
So the slab would almost have to be like a bridge deck, and I don't think that would be an economical fix just because of how much thickness and rebar and everything you have to put into it. We put in concrete conspans before, and they must be 12 inches thick and have rebar, every 4 inches or something, pretty heavy duty. So certainly an option we could look into, but I'll talk through the replacement options and then we'll see. We talked too about trying to get inside and building some sort of temporary, put a beam in there and support it or whatever, but it's got a couple feet of silt in there, so you'd have to somehow clean it out first, and pretty low clearance, so it'd be tricky for sure. And then you'd just be trying to save something that's doomed anyway. So for replacement structures, we think it's a little bit bigger than it needs to be. The same aluminum structure, just the materials would cost about $95,000. The concrete box about $115,000. And then what I think is a more economical choice, and what we've used a couple times in the last 5 years, is railroad tanker cars, with the ends cut off, obviously, and then all the access ports welded shut and everything. 2 of them side by side cost about $28,000. And since this was the cheapest option, I put together just real quick labor and equipment numbers and other materials for a total of about $75,000. It's probably worth noting here that water has gone over the road with the current structure, and it probably will with the new structure, just because the water gets so high there when it rains 6 inches after the ground is wet.
Now, that's gonna happen with a lot of structures if you get 6 inches.
Right, the road's just pretty low in comparison to the creek, so that's
Would
probably.
the tanker be a smaller diameter than what's in there?
Well, what's in there now is 25 feet wide and 9.5 foot tall. It's got, 2 to 2.5 foot of dirt in the bottom that's not really, conveying a lot of water. The tanker cars are a little bit bigger than 10-foot diameter, and there'd be 2 of them. So it would be a little less space than this current structure if it were cleaned out. But it's more space than the one upstream, less than the one downstream, so it kind of fits area-wise. So those are the options. What we would have to do if you wanted to move the project up, if we waited till next summer, we could just put it in the 5-year program when we get to that process. If you wanted it done this summer, we have to do a resolution to advance the project from 2028 to 2024, and then amend the current budget to take whatever $75,000 from our fund balance. And we usually wait until April to do the amendments, so by then we might be able to see how the budget's doing, see if we can take it from anywhere else rather than fund balance.
So this is something we could possibly do a winter that was friendly.
Do in the winter?
No, I mean as in with a winter budget that.
Oh, sure. I mean, our budget can go up or down 75,000 pretty easy depending on circumstance.
So what's gonna get bumped if we move this to the top of the list?
So you just come up with fund balance.
If, at the end of the year, we think things look pretty good and we don't actually take from fund balance, I wouldn't think we'd be bumping anything. If that isn't the case and we're just taking from fund balance, I'd say we're bumping something from, possibly from next year.
Bumping something that's more crucial than what this is.
There's another bridge up by Osmus Farm Supply that is for next year, that's about the same cost. That might get bumped down the road, and then each year, $75,000, bump it down the road.
North of Osmus.
It's south and east.
South, go that way. As I said, the one in the north, did you just replace?
Right, that one's replaced, yep. On south and east is just a little shorty, but it's got a posting on it. And it's got a lot of traffic, something like 70 vehicles a day, yeah. Then that or surface maintenance on the asphalt roads, we just do a smaller project. We kind of reorganize every year and see what fits, and it's hard to say exactly which one it would be. We already have everything lined up for this year, so we can't really cancel any of those projects.
The one by Osmus, there's many ways to get around it. This one, there's no way to get around it.
That's right.
And we know there's a lot of bone going across that bridge.
Yeah,
One way, you can build me a new road or maybe replace it, kind of the two options.
I guess there's also some farm traffic that uses his, and then, John's here with the campground, and they're looking at possibly building on the north side as well in the future,
Next spring,
next spring.
right. We actually have
That
Matt
would
lined up.
utilize that crossing then?
Correct. We'd be in the northeast corner, across the creek. There's 3.78 acres, northeast corner of our property. That would be where we're planning to build. So,
Not that one person's safety compares to two persons, you know, whatever, but it's, I guess, interesting to know that there's more development happening there.
we were planning for a Wisconsin home, so they bring them in with a crane across that bridge, pick it up, set it on the foundation that Matt Harms would be building for us. So it's yeah.
So that'd be a lot of traffic as well,
Right.
you know? So I don't know if I have a recommendation for you. You have all the facts that I have at this point, so it takes some board action to eventually to make this happen, but I think at this point, some general direction is about all we would need.
It's just sitting by one of your railroad car crossings. Like it's hanging on to doing pretty well from what I can see, so.
Yeah, we only have singles. This would be a double, so it'd be a little
This was
different.
Single, yeah. So with the double, like if you got water going over the road every now and then, it'd almost be more of an erosion problem with that coming together, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we have to do a little bit of figuring on how to handle that. In
Yeah.
Worth County, they have some doubles and triples that have kind of welded on head walls that kind of,
Okay, so once you got them
keep it
set
all
in there,
together.
they weld big metal plates in between them
the
then?
plates are on the ends, and then they fill that gap between them with concrete.
Yeah.
That's part of the cost of that. It's a pretty fast when you haul 3 loads of concrete out there just to fill in some space.
So that 75,000 estimate includes that.
Includes filling the middle with concrete, and I don't know what it costs to build head walls. We haven't done that before, so I don't have numbers on that. Some sheet steel and some time welding. Putting a bedding underneath of it, backfilling, and putting the road on top. It should all be included in there. I mean, we might vary by 10,000 up or down, but for the sake of this conversation, I thought that was close enough. You want to weigh in? I haven't really talked to you about the schedule at all about it because this has come together pretty quick, you know. It's been just 2 weeks since we had the posting put, notified to us about the posting, and then we got it up, you know, a few days later, and so we're trying to work quickly. So I guess maybe you want to comment on that.
Sooner the better, I guess, for scheduling wise. And obviously this summer we have a lighter year, but trying to get some of our other stuff caught up too that has been neglected in the past. It was kind of like some of our concrete bridges and stuff like that we're trying to work on this year that we had projects on, I guess, that I'd like to get done anyway.
You're planning on starting next year on the construction of,
As soon as the frost is out of the ground,
so
we're hopeful.
if that bridge isn't replaced, if we put it off, it's gonna be an issue for equipment going across that, so. Sounds like, to me, it's something that should probably be done as soon as you guys can do it, fit it in, I guess.
With the double tank.
I would think that would be,
I mean, you've indicated that probably no matter what structure you put in, you're gonna have water over the road.
I think so.
If you take one of these and make it strong enough to where, I think it'd be good enough.
But you're saying it could be $10,000 one way or the other, and the aluminum would be 95.
But
Just the
that's
structure.
hardness.
That's just the structure?
Yeah,
Okay.
so add another 50 to it probably.
Okay.
Probably more because of all the labor it takes to put those together.
All right.
that
I mean, a
aluminum,
guy spent a week putting the other one together, you know, 4 guys.
Yeah, but you're good
That
at
was
it now.
fun, wasn't it?
You can ask them if you see them.
did that one have That aluminum one, did it have like a dome to it too, or was that just straight?
There's a pipe arch, they call it, so the top's round and the bottom's round, but it's kind of squashed. This one's flat bottom, and it has vertical sides and then kind of a dome
Yeah,
top.
it just looks like very weak structure.
It does now.
Well, no, I mean, even, because you've got so much distance, you know, with a rounder one, you know, that it helps support itself, but this has got so much.
Yeah, you can't see it, but there are stiffeners bolted across the top to try and help the strength, but I agree, the shape doesn't
Yeah.
make you feel very good when you look at it, just, especially knowing it's aluminum. Especially after you see it deflected.
Well, there'd be some scrap value to the aluminum.
Well, that's probably true. I don't know what it weighs, not much, but
Oh,
Well, you got our indication then.
yeah.
yeah.
We'll have some formal action coming at some point for that.
Okay, we'll move on to 9:30 a.m. public hearing to abandon DD 2-3 Lat 2B1.
This is the one that you guys have talked about.
Yeah, we gotta open the public hearing.
Sorry.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for DD 2-3 Lat 2B1 abandonment.
I'll second.
Motion Derby and a second from Smith to open the public hearing to abandon DD 2-3 Lat 2B1. Do we need a roll call?
Nope.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
This is the one that we've talked about with the landowners. I know Scott is not in favor of it, but in looking at the terms in the code for abandonment, it just takes the majority of the landowners who own 60% or more of the land to do it, which we have. So, which they have. They all are in agreement of having it written up for future, correct?
for maintaining it?
For maintenance and everything.
Just to abandon.
Yes.
Well, and then for the future, so if one person wants to repair it and the other one doesn't, it's in the agreement that it doesn't matter. If the one person wants it done, it has to be done.
They're gonna abandon this tile. Both landowners have already put in private to get to the ditch a different way.
Well, I mean, then they have an agreement to maintain the private stuff as far as, yeah. I guess,
That's it, right?
Just to
Yeah.
take the tile and make it private is all
Yeah.
we're looking to do. We've got our main installed and everything hooked up and it's gonna work good.
well, I guess I can't.
And you have the locations of all of that, of course, their private tile,
No.
but,
I personally don't worry about the private.
but
Well, but
that's what we're trying to do, is to know where private tiles are eventually.
well, it'd be nice to at least have it on our map as a private tile, like the
What?
one you look up on Beacon. It'd be nice to have it on there so we know what's draining an area, especially one that's been abandoned. And
So we have record of it at
I
some
don't know
point.
if you got enough room on Beacon for
I
all
know.
those maps there. Yeah.
No,
For private?
just the main ones that go to the ditch that you put in. That replace the abandoned.
We can bring you up a map when Helga sends us the bill, I guess, if you want a picture of it.
I'm just not understanding why you would want to have the private tile. We haven't worried about private tile ever.
It would really be nice if all private tile around here so we could know what's really going on. But
That's always been the
it's very-
suggestion to farmers, if they come in and if they're tiling, to make sure
You tell
that,
them to record it.
yeah.
We don't have it in our office.
Yeah.
No. I don't know where we would keep that information.
Well, it seems like you would want to keep track of an abandoned,
It'll be in the drainage record that it was abandoned.
But what was it replaced with?
Yeah.
That's my.
That shouldn't be the concern of the district.
Well-
If you had the petition and we had the hearing, that's all the code states.
Yeah, we like to ask them to record it in the recorder's office so that it's there, but we don't keep it in our office.
Yeah.
discussion for another day, I guess, as far
Yeah,
as.
maybe so.
Yeah,
It's just that when we have the reclassifications and all of that kind of thing, it's really nice to have that information, isn't it?
I guess
you don't
usually,
have any private tile in our classifications?
no, and it's not necessarily in the classification, it's just,
And it's up to the landowners to bring that forward when we do a reclass, if it affects the reclass.
and usually when there's an issue with a county tile, the landowners know what all's connecting to it anyway, for the most part, other than some of the really old stuff that people have forgot about.
Right, and new landowners that didn't maybe know where the previous
Yeah.
private tile was, they have to find it, but
Okay. Is there any comment from the public as far as banning this tile?
I think I've made my position clear. I'll leave it at that.
Well, that's kind of where I was going with the, at least the recording of the, where the private tiles are, is it does affect our drainage in the road.
I agree. And that information is important, I think, and wherever we store it, know where it is.
Just, you guys already know how much flow is going through the quote-unquote county public tiles, right? You already know how much flow is going through them in order for you to make proper levies.
You mean the classification?
Yeah, the classifications. You already have that classification, right, is to know what the flow capacity
Sometimes
is.
they're reclassified.
Yeah.
We know what the flow capacity is, but we don't know how many patterned tiles have been added onto it, because on the private pattern tiling increases the amount of flow that has to go through. And that's why most of our mains are getting relatively undersized. I mean, it's, there's just a lot more private tile out there in the country than there ever was before. So.
I think if he gave us a map of the project afterwards, between Sue's office and ours, we could come up with a way to show this as an abandoned district tile.
I think that would be,
But, you know, trying to build a private tile layer in Beacon would be really cool.
They already have it.
Well, but what is it based on? That's maybe what we really don't know. And we don't edit or modify it or improve it through time. It's just there based on some, I think, information that comes from the DNR or something. So, if you wanted to really start that, it would take some dedicated time or a project. I mean, I don't even know.
I'm not saying going that far, I'm just saying this is kind of an important one for our road system there.
Yeah, I think if we had a map, we could just label it as Lat 2B1 abandoned and leave it in there.
yep, just have the information and have it someplace.
Yeah. So if you guys get a map when you're done, I'd appreciate getting that from you.
Your district.
I'll make the motion to abandon DD.
Well, we don't have to go out of the public hearing
Oh, we
first.
have to close?
Yeah.
Oh, let's do it. I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
The motion Smith and the second from Derby to close the public hearing to abandon DD 2-3, Lat 2B1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. I'll make the motion to abandon DD 2-3, Lat 2B1.
I'll second it.
The motion Smith and a second from Derby to abandon DD 2-3, Lat 2B1. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
With proper documentation.
All right. Auditor's office will discuss drainage matters. Oh,
Quick question, Bill, did you make formal resolution on replacing that? Has that been?
No, we
taken
just
care
gave
of?
him direction.
yeah, once he comes up with the final plans, then we'll approve them probably.
Approve it
So,
at that
I-
point,
yeah,
once you
but
get
we-
all the final numbers and plans and
Yeah,
so on.
yeah.
Okay,
Just gonna give him the approval to go ahead with the project, so.
perfect, thank
Or
you.
direction, I guess it was.
We'll give you something formal just so everyone's comfortable at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I don't have anything for
Nothing for drainage?
drainage.
All right.
Thank you.
What's that?
I don't have anything for drainage.
Yeah, I didn't have anything either. Seven, can we do seven quick?
Yep.
Set public hearing for anhydrous ammonia storage and pumping facility.
May 30th at 9:15.
Do you guys know what this is?
It's a new co-op, south of Buffalo Center there. They're gonna put in a couple of 45,000 gallon anhydrous bullets. And
They've been here before, they just didn't know they needed a public hearing, so we're just doing it official this time.
Okay. On Blacktop?
it's right on the blacktop there, but down by Ronnie Annet's place.
Okay.
I have maps and stuff in my office if you want to see them.
Okay, yeah.
I've had one neighbor give some concern on it.
Sure. Just trucks in and out, filling and,
And it's just a close proximity of that much anhydrous ammonia in case there was a large leak.
oh, sure.
Concern. He's well outside the legal limits.
Okay. So it's just a couple tanks and that's about it?
Yeah, there'll be a little bit of an expansion out there as far as, they're gonna take more farm ground.
Sure. Probably
And
rock pad and,
yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with that site out there, but I think they're gonna set them just to the northeast of what's currently there.
okay.
Are there already driveways?
There's a driveway, that won't affect it any, they'll
They won't
be
make
using the
it
same
bigger or
driveway.
anything?
They'll just have a room for semis to loop down and unload and come back out.
How far south of the city limits is it?
3 miles?
Oh, that far? Yeah. So it's outside the city purview then?
Oh, yeah.
May 30th at 9:15, you said, Fred?
I'll make a motion to set the public hearing for anhydrous ammonia storage and pumping facility south of Buffalo Center for May 30th at 9:15.
I'll second it.
Motion from John Volk and a second from Derby to set the public hearing for anhydrous ammonia storage pumping facility on May 30th at 9:15. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Could be late.
We've got 1 minute,
Set public hearing for budget amendment.
May 30th at 9 o'clock.
I'll make a motion to set the public hearing for a budget amendment, May 30th. At what time? 9?
9.
9 o'clock.
I'll second it.
Motion from Smith and a second from Derby to set the public hearing for budget amendment, May 30th at 9 o'clock. All in favor, say aye.
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 9:45.
All right, 9:45 a.m. for City EMS to discuss funding and county paramedics.
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you guys?
Good.
Good, how are you?
Oh, pretty good. So, the board of directors met on the Forest City ambulance, and we were just wanting some clarification. They've drafted up 6 questions that we typed up that were just, they wanted clarification on these questions after the change of course on EMS and everything else that we got the email from Sturgill. So the first question was, what does financial support to the Forest City Paramedic Department mean?
In what context?
That's, to the best of my knowledge, that's what Jason sent out in the email, was that it was gonna be that the EMS levy was gonna give financial support to Forest City Ambulance for the paramedics. And we don't really know what that means.
I thought it was going to the
That's not
city.
what they voted on. They voted for the money to go to the city to, instead of like the 75,000 that we pay right now, they were gonna give more money to the city for that kind of support.
So what dollar amount is that? Like what
Well, we haven't settled on that dollar amount yet as far as, how it goes. It's, Forest City wants to maintain a level of coverage for themselves, and we wanna be able, we'll put more in it so we can maintain a better response time and coverage for the rest of the county.
So we don't have a dollar amount yet?
No, it's never really the actual dollar amount. There's been some estimates out there. I would say it would be at least 200,000 instead of 75.
Okay.
Did you need to, or?
Yeah, I think we talked more like 225 at that time, didn't we, Marcia?
There was discussion on that, but there was also a range.
Yeah.
It was never, that dollar figure was never, that was the only thing that was discussed that night by the advisory council, that it was not set in stone. So there still has to be a decision on that part.
Yeah, and when we met with the city that day, it was more of a discussion, what would it look like at 225?
Knowing that probably that still wasn't gonna be enough.
When do you think we'll have a dollar amount, like, locked in?
Now, when is the next meeting?
We have a meeting in June,
So there isn't one in May.
well, March, June. So unless, the chairperson calls one early, we won't have one until June. Chairperson's Daisy. Oh, there you are. Look at,
Snuck in.
she did sneak in.
She has too many meetings.
So June, unless there's an earlier meeting? You know when in June?
What is it, the 3rd? Can't remember.
What we'd originally scheduled.
Yeah, the,
Yeah. You can't remember which one it is now either.
It's usually the second week, which would be the 16th, or 14th of May. If it's the normal.
14th
It's
of
a
June.
conflict, that's it.
So we're not until the 14th of June?
But that's what normal is.
Normal.
But as of right now, and the only, now remember, these are a list of questions that the entire board came up with, and we have a meeting tonight. So I'm just, as of tonight, walking out of here, it's June 14th, right? Is the next advisory council meeting?
Do you think it's in the best interest of the advisory council to meet sooner?
Yes.
Well, that's what I wanted to get out of you.
Definitely.
I don't serve on the advisory councils, I have to ask.
Thank you.
I know Forest City Ambulance, we're kind of hoping to have something for us to continue forward with business. Our goal is to have an answer, a dollar amount, expectations and everything by June 1st, so we can finish putting our pieces. You know, we've got other pieces of this puzzle for our business. So we can have our business plan for July 1 in place and operation.
So I agree, that we're coming down critical time.
Yeah. So I know that's was our kind of hope, was to have something solidified by June 1 so we can move forward as a board and make decisions on backup medics and other counties and transfers and everything else.
So if the chair of that committee chooses, council chooses to have one earlier, I mean, it can be as early as next week.
Question is, the other pieces of that funding, have they come up with any ideas? Have they met with Buffalo Center and have they met with Lake Mills?
Well, we have, yes.
Okay. After the approval?
No, I haven't talked to them after. But before, they were mostly in support of what we did.
The other question was, what was the financial, excuse me, what was the financial amount and how was this determined? I think we've already kind of hit on the amount. Was there a special, like, calculation you used? Is it just budget and shortfalls? Is it, how are we figuring out? I think is what they meant by that. I don't.
They want to know how they came up with
Like,
the
yeah, how
advisory.
was the dollar amount determined? It sounds like it was just kind of a budget decision off of operating expense is what I'm gathering.
The dollar amount that we're gonna give towards the paramedic service.
Yeah.
Would be on the four cities, roughly 40% of the population.
Okay.
So 60% of the calls are probably outside the city limits of Forest City.
Okay.
And I think it was basically off of.
So about 40% is what you guys have. Okay. What are your expectations of the Forest City Paramedic Department? What are you guys, with your contribution of the 200,000, what are you expecting the Forest City paramedics to do? Are you expecting them to be business as normal? Are you expecting an increase in coverage? Are you expecting a decrease in coverage? What are you expecting out of the paramedics for the 225,000?
We're gonna want at least one stationed in Thompson.
We were? I don't remember that discussion.
I was gonna say, I don't think
That was dropped in lieu of the other funding.
it was just business as normal, the same way requests that we're try to be as available as we can for Lake Mills and Buffalo Center. We set the dollar amount we charge Buffalo Center and Lake Mills for intercepting them. It's just business as normal, right?
That's what I took away from that meeting.
They would charge them for,
They would charge the other ambulance services.
They do
That's what
now,
you
they
can
would
do.
continue.
We do now,
to.
currently we do.
yeah.
They request us and then we get on board with them and then we charge them and then they collect from the patient, is how the trifecta snake works now.
I've got a question.
Yeah, Kevin.
Bill, I went to that meeting in Thompson, and I'm kind of with Bill. I thought the point was to have someone stationed there to fill in when they couldn't cover and would do paperwork, training, et cetera, and Lake Mills as well at times.
Yeah, you're right, it was. That was the plan at the vote. But now I think the budgets have kind of changed and.
So what they did at the last meeting, instead of doing that, they're putting funding towards assisting the city of Buffalo Center and the city of Lake Mills to hire people to help their services. So then we have more coverage in 3 points.
They're gonna put a full-time employee in the Buffalo Center and Lake Mills ambulance. And that position is gonna be at least an EMT, and it could possibly, may even get a paramedic in there for that too.
Well, I just thought that was a change, it was.
Side note off of the ambulance, Forest City ambulance, this is more a Buffalo Center ambulance question. Who did you guys talk to on Buffalo Center? When we were talking at the last meeting, everyone was fairly surprised at the whole paid employee thing.
They discussed it with them and they all seemed to be, if they were against it, they didn't speak up at the meeting. There was at least 10 of them there.
I just know one of them made the comment, they said, well, it was asked, would a paid employee help? And they said, well, yeah, it would help, but we'd rather have a paramedic in Thompson, is what Buffalo Center's general at the last general said when we were discussing it, but that's
No,
just.
it doesn't mean it. I'm not against putting a paramedic in Thompson because
Yeah.
they're our largest population without an ambulance service.
Yeah, no, I was just curious because a lot of people were on Buffalo, they were just surprised at the last business meeting. So like I said, that was separate from the Forest City thing. That wasn't part of the board's questions. What are your expectations? What is the plan? What is the planned intervention for providers in Lake Mills and Buffalo Center? And I think I heard you guys say your plan was to hire an EMT or paramedic.
Or higher.
So full-time would be like a 40 hours a week thing?
Yeah, 40 or 45, I think was mentioned.
Okay. / medic. What is the expectation of the Forest City Paramedic Department when Lake Mills does not have a crew still? after, even with the paid 40-hour-a-week person, are you guys still expecting either the paramedic / ambulance service to still be aiding them with response?
Well, it's what you do now, right?
Currently today, that is what we do, yes.
And hopefully we can help bolster Fall City enough where you guys can have enough.
Because that was kind of the other fold of it is there, with them helping the Lake Mills and the Buffalo Center ambulance, if the expectation is still the Forest City ambulance, it responds. Part of the problem the Forest City ambulance is having is the short notice and the instant strain on resources. So is Forest City is the ambulance gonna receive help for more staff so we can staff up to fill the days that Lake Mills can't? Because right now we only staff 2 crews in Forest City, and you know, if we have a day where Lake Mills doesn't have a crew, which they're usually short more than 40 hours a week, if we send 1 crew to Forest City, or if we send one crew to Lake Mills, those days we're wanting to have 3 crews on in Forest City because there's a lot of days that we have our backup truck is busier than the Buffalo Center ambulance. Like our crew 2, if that makes sense to you, we run upwards of 200 calls a year on just our backup crew. So our backup crew's busy enough, we'll need a 3rd crew to cover the city of Lake Mills because we've been pinched several times.
What percentage of those calls are during the normal work day?
I want to say, if I remember, our 70, don't quote me 100%, somewhere between 70 and 80% of our calls happen between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. As a county system. I think it's somewhere between 70 and 80%.
And when I would guess that when they're most short-staffed is during the workday when people are working.
Lake Mills is kind of a wild card. I mean, it's all the time. They only have 4 providers, so sometimes they're there during the day. 3 of their 4 providers, one of their providers is retired, and the other 3 work EMS. So it might be the weekend they have nobody around. It might be Monday night at midnight they have no one around. Like it's just they don't have a Monday through Friday. You know what I mean?
I mean, it is a bit of a Lake Mills problem. Forest City should not pay, in a sense, for their issues.
So if the suggestion is 225,000 or between 200 and 225 additional monies, minus the 75 that we always used to get, is the 150 enough to help cover
It's
Lake Mills?
basically budgeting 225 or whatever, 2 of them.
But I'm asking, does...
Well, if we're able to put somebody in Lake Mills, that's gonna take, because I would assume that they could probably get a driver and a first responder. It's just they're short.
I think they have a lot of work to do to get there.
Yeah.
They gotta do some recruiting.
And that's, I guess, and again, like, I'm not here to promote Lake Mills' problem. We're wondering for the Forest City ambulance, what are you guys expecting from us? And if you're expecting us to help them, which we're not saying necessarily no to, is there anything available for the Forest City ambulance to help us staff up to help the Lake Mills ambulance? Does that make sense? It's kind of
Previously, you indicated, we were providing funding to the city of Forest City for the paramedics, correct? And then the Forest City EMS would be billing each of the other services when a paramedic responds.
So technically the way it works is the Forest City ambulance service owns everything.
Yeah.
Like they own the paramedics, it's a donation from the city and a donation from you guys that puts the employee in the seat of the truck that the Forest City ambulance owns. So the paramedic runs under the Forest City Ambulance's license, so the city didn't have to get their own, under their own. It runs under all of the volunteer ambulances insurance. We do double work comp, because the paramedics are covered under both. Malpractice, all of that comes along with the employee side of it.
In the thing, each ambulance service is gonna get a full-time employee.
Okay,
So beyond what we give to the paramedics, you
There'll
guys are
be-
gonna get your,
there will be more money, okay.
I mean, that's the way I understood it when we, because if we give an employee
Do
to,
you remember that?
That's not what I heard. either.
No, I only remember
No.
up to 85 and up to 85 and the paramedic funding is all I remember. I wasn't a voting member, but.
I wasn't
Is that
at
what
that
you
meeting.
saw?
Up to 85 was correct. That dollar amount was not
Set.
determined.
No, but
and
there's
set
a
at
range
that meeting.
ish.
But it's same with the other funding, it was 65 to 85 for the other two.
Correct, Terry.
So that's the only fundings we talked about, was those three things.
I guess it was before that, I proposed that each ambulance service get an employee in the ambulance things.
So there's still, I would say there's still, I'll put a question mark behind that one. And we'll go from there.
Let me pull up the minutes.
And just for clarity for me, so the 20 to 25,000 is funding that's gonna go to the city to support the paramedic program. Our 200, yeah. Is there any funding being designated to Forest City Ambulance at this time?
Not at this time after
Not
that.
right at this second,
Okay.
but they're.
I guess the one thing I question though is, okay, originally, in our original plan that we presented to the county people before the vote, we mentioned that at that time, there would be auto response for a paramedic if we did it that way. And that there would be no billing to those services with auto response. So there's a lot of things that are changing, and I just want to identify that, yeah, there will be money coming back to the Forest City EMS from those calls. Even though the county is funding.
And without having anything actually figured out or voted on, that's kind of why we're wanting these questions answered, is so we can figure out what kind of money are we going to be charging for to make up the deficit in our budget. We'll have to charge more than the 150. Because current to date, if the Forest City paramedics go to Buffalo Center and run a cardiac arrest, we charge them $150. The Forest City paramedics and the Forest City ambulance spend about, not counting fuel, wear and tear on the vehicle to get there, just in the ALS supplies, we're probably spending about $500 to $600 in drugs, innovation equipment, that kind of stuff. So, and it's always kind of been just a big brother thing. County contribution, that kind of stuff, that we've been like, okay, but if we've got to tighten up our budget, it's time to tighten up our purse strings too.
The minutes say that they'll provide funding for an EMT up to paramedic for Lake Mills and Buffalo Center, and that Sturgill and Derby will meet with Forest City to discuss dollars with Huffman.
And we did.
And you met.
We discussed it.
And then, I guess the last one was, who's on each council, what roles do they play, and each responsibility. I'm thinking, instead of we're not wanting a head count as far as who, what, where, but the big question was what was that one council's name that we met once on? Technical committee. None of this is run through, or any of the recommendations from the technical committee have followed up the pipe, so we're kind of wondering, are you even wanting us to continue to meet? To a lot of people that were showing up to it, it felt like kind of a busy committee, it was pointless. So are you wanting us to meet? Are you wanting
Well, I kind of looked at, just personally, I thought that was a place to vet some of that, what you were discussing
What we
with him
wanted.
about,
Yeah.
discussing with Buffalo Center, discussing
Yeah.
with Lake Mel. I thought that county-wide technical committee would address some of those things and make recommendations to the advisory council.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, all of this happened, and there were private meetings at both ambulances, not in a group, and no one
They
really knew what.
weren't private.
No, but they, instead of outside of the technical committee, it was, someone went to Lake Mills, someone went to Buffalo Center, you know, and then it was like, well, what's the point of the committee if we're gonna be chasing to the meetings, then, and you're getting your information that way, what's the point of the technical committee?
I saw the technical committee as once it was set up, once the infrastructure of this whole thing was set up, then the technical committee would get together, they'd have discussions, what are the needs and wants of Buffalo Center? What are the needs and wants of, you know, how is Forest City dealing with the additional calls? What do we need to change? And then they would come up with a list of, this is how we would like things to change, submit that to the advisory council, and they would address it.
Yeah, and I just think a lot of people thought that the EMS agencies were going to have the group meeting and try to help with setting up the infrastructure, maybe. But be honest with you, I wasn't at the.
The problem is they weren't meeting on a regular basis, so.
Yeah, I think a
Well,
lot
I
of
don't
it.
really think there was a lot for them to
I
decide
was gonna
yet
say there
until the foundation is set. And then they could have their meetings, make their suggestions.
And I honestly think that the feeling, me personally as Joe, I think it was a communication thing. I mean, I think there would have been some really good information come from, you know, the technical committee, the people that run the system, kind of putting more input into the setup of the system. But I just think it was, we had the big communication problem between the three boards being technical,
Well, you guys give
advisory,
your
and
advice, and then we have to decide, dollars wise, what can
Yeah.
be done. It's, you don't always want people that are in charge of
No.
something making the decisions in the end. You want someone that's somewhat outside the whole thing
100%.
to control, you know, spending. Otherwise, there's
But EMS
mental health. We've got people that are in that system that say that we can't spend enough and we need to shovel more and more and more and more money into it. And, but at some point, you can spend enough.
No, and I get that. I'm just saying, you know, a lot of it comes just
One.
from the complexity of the EMS system. You know, a lot of people don't understand how we get someone from Forest City to Rake in 18 minutes.
And that's kind of why we put some of those city people on there, because at some point in the future, they may be key in more funding.
Yeah.
And then they will understand what the needs are, and how they can help.
No, I think that was kind of the gist of that question. I wasn't around for most of these questions. I was on
Our
call.
hope would be that, you know, each of those mayors, each of those representatives from each of those areas would have their finger on the pulse of their own town and be there to represent their own city and try to make it the best.
No, yeah, and it's just some of the feedback I'd heard, you know, they just felt like it was a pointless committee because they hadn't been involved in any of the planning.
It sure is
and
until it's
Yep, so
needed.
more to come when the system's up and running. Okay.
I mean, they're kind of the planning for the next year budget.
Okay.
How the things are going and what needs to change, or if it needs to change, with recommendations. We'll only have a few months under our belt by the time the budgeting starts for
Yeah.
next year.
Because we're still looking at the same time frame for the money about October. It's a July 1 start, but we're still looking in that October range for the.
Or were we going to
Right.
We were gonna be able to
borrow from ourselves?
borrow from
Self-fund.
ourselves.
And be available July 1.
Okay. All righty, well, I thank you guys very much for your time.
All right.
You got any questions for us?
No, I think it kind of cleared up some things.
Okay. Cool.
Good. Thanks for coming in.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. See you later. Move on to number 10, Julie Sorensen, Public Health, to discuss with possible action sanitarian position.
I don't have anything at this time, but I hopefully will by next Wednesday. We'll have a recommendation from my Board of Health for you. Okay?
Okay. And we'll move on to open forum.
Start with, so a while ago, there was a code passed, and I guess we've been following it, but it needs to go in the handbook. It's about, making sure that employers are, or each department head is making sure when they sign into a hotel, that the hotel is making sure that the hotel's human trafficking training is up to date. So I've got a form that when someone is gonna stay in a hotel, that they need to fill out, and here is the code section I would like to add to the agenda for next week. This is just kind of a little heads up for you.
So anytime you make a booking in a hotel, you've got to ask the hotel if they're
In compliance.
Yep, or there's a website that you can go to.
And it's listed on the website whether they have had the training or not.
Yep,
and if they're not in compliance, we can't stay there.
you can, but you have to pay for the hotel out of your own pocket.
So if it's the only hotel available, everything's booked up in a town, then you're just gonna have to pay for it yourself.
Yes, because the code section says that no county money can be spent for a hotel that's not in compliance.
My guess would be to their advantage to make sure they're in compliance.
Well, it just happened that one of the auditors didn't double check and had to pay for a class out of her own pocket, or a hotel out of her own pocket, so it happens. I guess that's probably not yet, but,
So that'll be on next week.
so that'll be on next week's agenda. I just wanted to give you a little heads up about it. This one's for Terry. This one's for Bill. This one's for Terry. And then I'll need those papers back.
I'll make a motion to, well, we're still back on number 12.
Yeah, I guess we gotta go to number 12.
We didn't have any more on 11, did we?
I think I'm good.
How about anybody else? You want to make a call?
Oh, anybody else out there that has anything for open forum? All right, then we'll move on to number 12, consider for approval resolution to adopt budget.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to adopt the budget.
I'll second it. Motion Jeremy and a second Jen Vogt to approve the resolution to adopt the budget. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 13, consider for approval auditors transfers.
Probably wouldn't hurt. I'll make a motion to approve the auditor's transfers.
I'll second.
Motion Derby and a second from Smith to approve the auditor's transfers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Number 14, consider for approval payroll claims.
Thank you.
No, wait a minute, that was supposed to be received
What is it?
for the request
For Jackie.
from the assessor. Wasn't it? Yeah. About
Well, it should be, but it's fine.
Okay.
In the back. Just put it
There.
Just put it there.
To get the high end.
She probably didn't have a vacation or sick, so she
Works.
took time,
Those are
just unpaid.
is that payroll, or that you don't have to sign, it's payroll.
I've never seen one like that. I guess I don't remember what that.
Usually Sue keeps track of all the payroll in her office, because she's
No, I don't. It's in the vault. Under lock and key. Maximum security.
thought about using it the other day,
Did you?
when I sent out those letters.
Oh,
Thought-
you put my name on them all?
Yeah, thought about it.
Good time. That's what they had to call it, my permission.
I was, yeah, it seemed like a lot of work. So I didn't. Then I'd have to talk to you for like a half an hour and all that stuff. So.
I know, and I have such trouble getting you to be quiet. It's,
So who are you?
I'm with Senator Grass's office.
Oh, okay.
I recognize it.
Yep, I'm just doing, I try to get to every county once or twice a year, every supervisor's meeting. Basically just here, if you have an issue with a federal agency, I'll give you my card just in case. But I know there's been a lot of road projects and things going out, and sometimes there's grants that are being written or requested, and also I've been hearing a lot about EMS things, and I know this is where it gets talked about, so just wanted to stop by.
EMS is awful.
I don't think anybody has a really great time on the county level with it.
So
Between EMS and recycling on that.
We've discussed so many things from so many different directions, it gets confusing.
I just, some counties, it's where, I mean, they're in a desert where they didn't have anything for a certain period of time, and there's barely any overlap. When they got something figured out, it's just,
Well, we have a rough time because we don't have a hospital.
yeah.
And a lot of the counties have a hospital. And so they can have a county hospital or a city hospital where they can get tax dollars for that. And
You're in a, I mean, you're in a little bit different situation being like that. But Worth County's the same way, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
They're actually
County,
worse.
yeah, has a worse time than us, but.
Well, and you've got, I mean, I was just sitting here looking at the map too, and I didn't realize that half the townships don't even have a town. So you've got a lot of open space in between there really too.
Mhm.
We're farming and rural.
Yeah, I mean,
So I'd like to, thank, I think it's, is it state or federal funding that's giving the extra incentive for emergent, or the, what do they call them, the rural,
emergency
hospitals? I
The governor
appreciated
did that, the governor did that this year, as a way to get more, to qualify more for funding on the federal level from Medicaid and Medicare. Before they were, it's one of those stupid
Now,
red tape kind of issues.
Is that pass-through funding from the federal to the state, and then they administer it?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what I understood, that you get north of the border up here, just a few miles, and it's a different funding.
Yeah.
In Minnesota.
I mean, that's one of the most aggravating things, I know, when we talk about healthcare, is that we have some of the best quality of care, but we have some of the lowest reimbursement rates. And you look at Louisiana's usually picked out for being the lowest quality of care and outcomes, and they have one of the highest reimbursement rates. So it just really doesn't make sense.
Why is
I think
that?
we're like number 48 for reimbursement, which is why we have issues with EMS, nursing, just medical staff in general at hospitals too.
And they work hard to try to keep up with the new funding streams and how they can do it and not get in trouble. And
yeah, and they made it through COVID with a lot of red in their books too. So
My husband was a surge tech in Wisconsin and made $26 an hour, and came to Iowa, made like $12, $13, $14 an hour.
Yeah.
So he quit. It's just ridiculous.
I know Nyack, and I think now Northeast Iowa. I'm out of the Waterloo office, and I live in Denver, which is just north of Waterloo. I think Northeast Iowa Community College is partnering, and Nyack is to try and get more people into EMS and repairmen programs, but there's just a shortage of bodies too for that, especially.
Weren't you from like Janesville or something like that?
Denver.
Denver, yeah, right close.
Yep.
The other concern that we always have is the waters of the U.S., that is ongoing fight.
Yeah. Which we'll know hopefully within the next 45 days what the Supreme Court decides, because that's on their docket to be decided by the end of June. And that's still in the 2016 challenge. We've had two votes since then, technically. The Trump one, which was overruled, and now this current administration's one. I don't know. At least it's been stayed again for the 26 states that applied for that. But
Our farmers say
it's scary for my family farms, and we have ponds. Yep. So, like I said, our office does do a lot, and I stop by with NIACOG and things like that too. So if you do have any grants, through even like USDA or DOT or anything like that, please, and you need a letter of support or something from our office, happy to do that.
I know we were talking about access to the north side of Rice Lake, which connects to a federal land.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out funding for improving the road so that you don't have to drive on a dirt road to get there.
Is it a level B road right now?
No, it's level A, but it's a tourism thing, and we can't afford to pave it. And we were hoping there'd be some federal funds to help access to some of those things, but it doesn't directly go to that federal land. It kind of is adjacent to it.
In our case, it's our only lake, and that's a boating lake, and we would like to promote it somehow, be able to get people out there and enjoy the lake, but vote on that.
Isn't there a little one up there too, or is that a private one?
That is Rice.
That's the one we're talking
I
about.
thought you were
No,
talking
Rice
about
Lake's down there.
Yeah, Rice Lake's
Yeah.
there.
Oh, that little Silver Lake.
Silver Lake, yeah.
Yeah, it's really not a.
That's
vote.
not Silver Lake.
Isn't it Silver?
Silver Lake's in Fort County.
Doesn't it have
Oh,
a
that's right.
campground around it?
That's
Doesn't this one have a campground around it? Is it?
Three Fingers has a.
No,
Yeah,
right,
he's
he's
way
up
up
in
in the
Norway.
northeast.
Oh, okay.
Norway,
What is that?
by Rock.
The campground's around the one in Worth County, isn't it?
Oh, that's Hogsback. That's
Yeah.
not actually a lake.
That's not a lake.
It's like a swamp or.
Yeah, yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah, it looks more like a lake on there, but no, they're all more like,
Well, at
wetlands.
least that one says slough at least.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you got
Oh, Irish Slough.
Myrie Slough
In a really wet year, they look like a lake.
Yeah.
Most of the
Last
time,
few
it
years
just
they
looks
have.
like a bunch of reeds.
Well, tell Senator Grassley I appreciate his work on the investigations. I think we're getting somewhere on that. Hopefully it goes somewhere.
Well, he's put pressure on where he thinks there should be transparency on,
It's a struggle
Issues
when
with
you're not the party in power.
even when they were.
Yeah.
So,
It seems like we hear a lot of talk about it and the investigations and all this, but nothing ever really happens.
that's a frustration for him,
Yeah.
that there's not accountability when
And then,
for you and I, there would be.
then this whole January 6th thing, where's he stand on that? He seems to be on the,
As far as,
somewhat on the wrong. I mean, these people being held forever without getting to trial and, I mean, they're still out trying to find more of them when they just went. Somebody opened up them great big 20-ton doors or whatever they are to let those people in, because that place, I've been there 3 times with my kids on a Destination DC trip, and you can't get in that building unless somebody lets you in if they don't want you in. So somebody opened up all that, and these people are walked in, most of them were just knuckleheads walking around. Well, they were knuckleheaded for doing it, they may not be knuckleheads. And yet Grassley seems to side a little bit with just letting it sit the way it is. To me, it seems,
yeah, I know,
and I've been voting for him ever since I was old enough to, so.
watching him get rushed off the floor on C-SPAN by Capitol Police was a little bit surreal for me.
Yeah, but that's, that might be a little bit surreal,
Yeah.
but why were they in there? If they don't want people in there, they don't get in there. That place is built to be able to take a time of war. I mean, they have technology and stuff there. If they didn't want people in there, they wouldn't have been in there. So somebody opened those doors. And that's where, the fact that they got in there and scared the people, I'm not a proponent of that in a sense, but most of them were just walking around. And the ones that were actually being threatening and stuff there's information out there that says they're possibly some nefarious characters that weren't necessarily MAGA Republicans or whatever. To me, it isn't the fact that them guys are getting rushed out of there. The reason is why, how the hell were they able to get in there?
I think it would come down to the same thing with transparency on all fronts. I mean,
Somebody made a decision to let them in. Somebody opened up them big doors.
And why wasn't there, why didn't Nancy Pelosi actually,
Well, why didn't she take the
call in
troops?
troops?
Or call them
She
in?
was supposed to call in help.
And she was offered the opportunity to do it before this ever happened, and she didn't do it. I mean, to me, it seems like someone else is running the show, and it isn't Mr. Grassley.
no, he's definitely in the minority on.
Yeah,
on these.
To me, then he should come out against this whole January 6th thing.
I think there's so many segments of it that you gotta kind of be cautious on.
And I'll guarantee you, if any one of them people was really in danger of being harmed, the people that were gonna harm them would have been dead. They had people in place in there. They've got people standing around there that are all trained in how to handle situations like that. So Was there a real threat in my mind? I mean, I've seen the place and I know, you see people standing around there and you wonder who they are, and my guess is there someone who could take care of me in a hell of a quick moment if I was to really make a threat towards one of their lives.
Are we done with open forum now?
Yeah, I guess that would be open forum.
Okay.
All right, yeah.
All right, but did you make the motion for the payrolls then?
I will.
Okay,
Motion to approve payroll.
I'll second it.
Motion Mr. Smith and second to approve payroll claims. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.
Okay.